Hey Midnights! We hope you enjoy our stories. Next one, Beyond Tinkerbell, Unveiling the Ancient Origins of Fairies. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Fairies, in common perception, are often understood as tiny, magical, often winged beings, typically depicted as benevolent or mischievous, dwelling in enchanted natural places. They are creatures of folklore and fantasy, associated with nature's beauty and wonder, but also with hidden secrets and the power to influence human lives, for good or ill. This popular image, largely shaped by literature and art, forms the gateway to a deeper, more complex understanding of their ancient origins. Fairies, those ethereal beings of myth and legend, have captivated human imagination for centuries. Their stories are as old as spoken language, woven into the fabric of countless cultures around the globe. To delve into the world of fairies is to explore the liminal spaces between belief and skepticism, nature and magic, the seen and the unseen. The concept of fairies isn't a single, monolithic idea but a tapestry of diverse beliefs, deeply rooted in animistic and pagan traditions where spirits were believed to inhabit natural elements, trees, rivers, rocks, and the very air itself. Early human societies, dependent on the natural world for survival, sought to understand and appease these unseen forces. Many scholars believe that the earliest forms of fairy belief stem from pre-Christian Celtic and Germanic mythologies. These cultures often personified natural phenomena, associating them with benevolent or mischievous entities. For instance, the Irish Aussie are believed to be remnants of the Tuatha Dé Danann, a divine race who retreated into the Hollow Hills when humans arrived, becoming the people of the mounds. This concept of a prior, powerful race retreating into the earth or other dimensions is a recurring theme in global folklore, suggesting a subconscious memory of earlier inhabitants or belief systems. Across Europe, the idea of little people or hidden folk emerged, often associated with ancient burial mounds, forests, and other secluded places. These beings were sometimes seen as ancestral spirits, nature guardians, or even mischievous tricksters. The small stature could derive from misinterpretations of archaeological evidence, such as small burial sites, or from a perceived lack of power compared to larger human communities, forcing them into hidden existences. During the medieval period, fairy lore continued to evolve, often intertwining with Christian beliefs. Fairies were sometimes seen as fallen angels, not evil enough for hell but not good enough for heaven, thus existing in a perpetual earthly realm. This theological explanation allowed for their existence within a Christian worldview. This period also saw the rise of more formalized fairy tales, often with a moralizing tone, as the Church sought to incorporate or control pre-existing pagan narratives. The primary method of spreading fairy stories was through oral tradition. Generations passed down tales around hearth fires, through songs, and during communal gatherings. Travelers, merchants, and migrating populations also contributed to the dissemination of these stories across different regions and cultures. The consistency of certain tropes, like changelings or fairy rings, across geographically disparate areas highlights the powerful influence of shared human experiences and migratory patterns. From the Renaissance onwards, literary works played a significant role in shaping and popularizing fairy narratives. William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, for example, solidified the image of tiny, winged fairies in the English imagination, largely a deviation from earlier, more human-sized depictions. Later, collectors like the brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen meticulously recorded and published folk tales, often sanitizing or altering them for wider audiences, further cementing these narratives in popular culture and influencing their modern perception. Their work, stemming from the early 19th century, was part of a broader romantic movement to collect and preserve national folklore. In the heart of an ancient forest, known by the local villagers as the Whispering Woods, lived a young woman named Elara. She possessed an unusual affinity for nature, a quiet understanding of the rustling leaves and the babbling brook that flowed near her humble cottage. The villagers, though wary, whispered of strange lights in the woods after dusk, of unseen music carried on the wind, and of small, perfect rings of mushrooms that appeared overnight. They called them fairy rings, and believed it was dangerous to step within their bounds, fearing being trapped by a fairy dance or spirited away. This belief in fairy rings, scientifically known as a natural phenomenon caused by fungal growth, has been a source of fascination and superstition for centuries, directly linking the mundane with the mystical in human perception. Elara, however, was drawn to the wood's enchantment. One moonlit evening, guided by an iridescent glow, she stumbled upon a clearing she had never seen before. There, dancing under the luminous boughs of an ancient oak, were beings of pure light and melody. They were no taller than her hand, with wings like stained glass, and their laughter tinkled like tiny bells. These were the wood sprites, the oldest and most reclusive of the forest's fairy folk. Their appearance, small and winged, was directly influenced by the pervasive imagery popularized in Renaissance literature and cemented in the Victorian era, though older European folklore often depicted fairies as human-sized or even larger. These wood sprites were truly a sight to behold. Their skin possessed the translucent quality of a dragonfly's wing, and their hair, woven with dewdrops and tiny blossoms, shimmered with every movement. Their eyes were like polished emeralds, deep and ancient, reflecting the dappled moonlight. Their wings, gossamer thin and veined with threads of gold and silver, vibrated with a faint, musical hum, propelling them through the air with effortless grace. They wore tunics spun from the softest moss and adorned with miniature ferns, blending seamlessly with the verdant surroundings. Their slender fingers, tipped with tiny, almost transparent nails, seemed capable of delicate manipulation, from coaxing a bud to open to repairing a broken spiderweb. Their queen, a regal figure with hair like spun moonlight, noticed Elara. Her form was slightly larger, perhaps a foot tall, exuding an aura of serene power. Her wings were grander, like those of a luna moth, spanning almost twice her height, and pulsed with a soft, internal luminescence. Instead of fear, she saw curiosity and respect in the human's eyes. The queen, whose name was Lyra, invited Elara to join their dance. For hours, Elara moved with them, feeling the ancient magic of the woods flow through her veins. She learned of their purpose, to nurture the forest, to guide the growth of trees, to ensure the purity of the springs. They were the unseen architects of the natural world, representing an animistic reverence for ecological processes, a belief that predates modern science. From Lyra, Elara learned that the wood sprites were a remnant of an earlier age, when the veil between their world and the human one was thin. As humans grew more numerous and their impact on the land increased, the sprites retreated, becoming more hidden, more cautious. This narrative reflects the historical shift from animistic societies living in harmony with nature to more anthropocentric views that saw nature as something to be controlled and exploited, pushing the otherworld further from human perception. Their existence was tied to the health of the forest. If the woods withered, so too would they. This concept illustrates the interdependence between mythical beings and their environment, a powerful metaphor for ecological fragility. Elara became a silent guardian of the Whispering Woods, sharing Lyra's wisdom with her village, advocating for sustainable practices, and teaching them to respect the unseen life that thrived within its depths. The villagers, initially skeptical, began to notice the forest flourishing, their crops yielding richer harvests. They never saw the fairies directly, but they felt their presence, a benevolent magic that permeated the very air. But Elara also learned of the other side of the fairy world. Not all of the wood sprites were as gentle as Lyra's court. There were the Glimmerkin, tiny, iridescent beings who delighted in tying knots in horses' manes and hiding tools, their pranks sometimes turning genuinely inconvenient. These mischievous trickster figures, often called piskies in Cornwall or fukas in Ireland, represent the unpredictable and sometimes frustrating aspects of daily life that ancient peoples attributed to unseen forces. The Glimmerkin were smaller, perhaps only an inch or two high, their bodies almost entirely composed of flickering light, making them hard to pinpoint. They lacked discernible wings, instead darting about like fireflies, their eyes like twin pinpricks of light. And deeper in the shadowed parts of the woods, Lyra warned of the Grimlings, beings who were once guardians but had grown bitter with human neglect and deforestation. They caused sudden blights on crops, spooked livestock, and could lead lost travelers into impassable bogs purely out of spite. These malevolent figures, akin to the unseelie court of Scottish folklore, embodied the consequences of human disrespect for the natural world and the darker, more fearful aspects of the unknown. The Grimlings were a stark contrast to the wood sprites. They were larger, almost human-sized, their skin a mottled gray-green, like decaying bark, and their eyes glowed with a malevolent reddish light. Their limbs were thick and gnarled, and they moved with a heavy, dragging gait, leaving a faint scent of damp earth and decay in their wake. Their voices were harsh whispers, like dry leaves skittering across the forest floor. The notion of fairies turning malicious due to human actions is a strong moralistic component of folklore, serving as a deterrent against environmental destruction. They are not good or bad as you understand it, Lyra had explained, her voice like rustling leaves. They simply are. Their nature is tied to the balance of the forest. If the forest thrives, they are content and often benevolent. If it suffers, their nature sours, and their actions become a reflection of that suffering. Respect is the key, child. Respect for the land, and respect for the unseen life within it. This philosophical view aligns with the often amoral nature of ancient deities and spirits, who operate on principles beyond human concepts of good and evil, emphasizing consequence over inherent morality. Fairies, as Lyra illuminated, serve a multitude of purposes within the tapestry of folklore, extending far beyond simple benevolence or malice. Their primary role is often that of guardians of the natural world. They are the unseen forces that oversee the health of forests, the purity of rivers, the vitality of crops, and the well-being of wild animals. They ensure the cyclical rhythm of nature, from the blossoming of spring to the slumber of winter. Beyond direct protection, they act as enforcers of ecological balance and consequences. If humans respect the land, leaving offerings and treading lightly, fairies might bestow blessings like bountiful harvests, healthy livestock, or even guidance. Conversely, if humans despoil nature, fell sacred trees without permission, or exhibit greed, fairies might unleash misfortunes, blight, illness, or lead them astray, serving as a powerful, supernatural deterrent against environmental exploitation long before modern conservation efforts. Another crucial function of fairies is to explain the unexplainable. In eras without scientific understanding of disease, mental illness, or unusual natural phenomena, fairies provided a compelling, albeit supernatural, explanation. A sudden illness might be a fairy stroke, a lost object the prank of a brownie, or a child's developmental delay attributed to a changeling, a fairy child swapped for a human one. They also served as moral guides and social regulators. Fairy tales often contain implicit lessons: respect elders, be kind to strangers, don't be greedy, and always honor your word. Breaking a promise to a fairy, or disrespecting their ways, almost invariably led to dire consequences, reinforcing community values and caution. Furthermore, fairies embody a sense of wonder, magic, and escape from the mundane. They represent the possibility of something more, something beyond the visible world, offering a glimmer of enchantment in daily life. Their songs, dances, and hidden realms provide a canvas for human imagination, a retreat into a world where anything is possible. They also function as liminal beings, bridging the gap between the human world and the spiritual or supernatural realm. They can be messengers, intermediaries, or guides for those brave or foolish enough to seek them out, often at the boundaries of human habitation, ancient woods, forgotten ruins, and secluded waterways. Essentially, fairies exist in folklore not just as characters, but as complex conceptual tools used by communities to understand their environment, enforce social norms, cope with uncertainty, and add a layer of magic to the fabric of existence. Alar often found herself mediating, explaining to frustrated farmers that their missing tools might be a glimmerkin's prank because they had left litter in the stream, or that the sudden illness in their cattle might stem from felling a sacred oak without so much as an apology to its ancient spirit. She taught them to leave small offerings of milk or honey on doorsteps, a practice known as feeding the fairies or providing milk money, which is documented in many European peasant traditions. She also advised them to speak softly in the woods, and to always ask permission before taking from nature, reinforcing a code of conduct for interacting with the land that parallels animistic rituals of appeasement. The villagers, seeing the tangible positive changes, slowly began to understand the complex, reciprocal relationship with the unseen folk of the Whispering Woods, solidifying a new form of local cultural belief that integrated ancient wisdom with modern understanding. When discussing the existence of fairies, it's crucial to distinguish between folklore and verifiable evidence. The literal existence of tiny, winged, magical beings with the ability to grant wishes or cause mischief is, from a scientific perspective, considered fiction. There is no empirical evidence, no fossil record, and no verifiable encounters that prove their physical presence in the world as described in folklore. The scientific method demands repeatable, observable phenomena, which fairy encounters do not provide. However, the widespread and enduring belief in fairies across diverse cultures is a significant fact in itself, speaking to a fundamental human need to explain the unexplainable, to personify natural forces, and to find wonder in the world. This universality suggests common cognitive patterns in human perception and interpretation of reality. Fairies can be seen as manifestations of the human subconscious, embodying archetypes of nature, mischief, or the sublime. Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious might suggest that these figures tap into universal human experiences and symbolic representations. In some cases, sightings of fairies might be attributed to pareidolia, seeing patterns in random data, like faces in clouds, misinterpretations of natural phenomena, like fireflies or unusual light refractions, particularly in misty conditions, or even psychological suggestion and mass hysteria. The famous Cottingley fairies photographs from the early 20th century, though later revealed to be hoaxes, illustrate how readily people can believe in such phenomena when presented with suggestive evidence. Ultimately, the stories and beliefs surrounding fairies have had a profound impact on art, literature, music, and social customs, demonstrating their significant role in human cultural history, shaping our relationship with nature, morality, and the unknown. Folklore is the traditional beliefs, customs, and stories of a community, passed down through generations by word of mouth. Fairy tales are a prime example of folklore, reflecting the fears, hopes, and values of the societies that created them. The evidence for fairies within folklore is not scientific proof, but rather the sheer volume and consistency of narratives across time and geography, showing a persistent thread in human collective imagination. While not direct evidence of fairies, archaeological sites like ancient burial mounds, known as fairy hills or raths in some cultures, and megalithic structures often have strong associations with fairy lore, suggesting a historical reverence for these locations and the beliefs tied to them. These sites were often seen as portals to the other world or homes of ancient spirits. Furthermore, numerous geographical features worldwide bear names linked to fairies, indicating a historical belief in their presence in those specific locations and reflecting the enduring power of these legends to shape human interaction with the landscape. Throughout history, there have been documented accounts of individuals claiming to have seen or interacted with fairies. While these accounts lack scientific verification, they are valuable as historical records of human belief and experience, providing insight into the cultural psychology of different eras. For instance, medieval chronicles occasionally mention encounters with strange, otherworldly beings. Anthropological researchers studying indigenous cultures often find rich traditions of spirit beings akin to fairies, highlighting the universality of such beliefs and their function in explaining natural phenomena, social norms, and personal experiences. For example, some Amazonian tribes believe in forest spirits that guard natural resources, similar to European dryads. Fairies are a global phenomenon, but certain countries and regions are particularly rich in fairy lore. Ireland is perhaps the most famous country for fairy sightings and stories. Here, the Oussie are central to folklore, often associated with ancient mounds. They can be benevolent or mischievous, and stories abound of humans being away with the fairies spirited away to the fairy realm, often returning years later to find little time has passed, a common motif known as time slippage in the otherworld. The leprechaun, a solitary, shoemaking fairy known for his pot of gold at the end of a rainbow and his tricky nature, is also famously Irish. The banshee, a female spirit foretelling death through keening, is another prominent figure, highlighting the darker, more ominous aspects of the fairy world. Scotland shares many similarities with Irish fairy lore, particularly with the wee folk or hidden people. Their stories often feature the Seelie Court, benevolent fairies who seek human companionship, and Unseelie Court, malevolent fairies who delight in human torment, explicitly defining the moral duality within their pantheon. Brownies are helpful household spirits who perform chores in exchange for small gifts, demonstrating the reciprocal relationship often sought with fairies. The Kelpie is a dangerous water horse that lures humans to their drowning, a chilling reminder of the perils of nature. Tales of changelings, where fairies swap human babies for their own, are also common, often used to explain childhood illnesses or developmental delays. England also boasts a wide array of fairy types. Pixies, especially in Cornwall and Devon, are known for leading travelers astray in moors and forests, often called pixie-led, a benign form of trickery. Puck, a mischievous sprite from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, became iconic for his playful, sometimes chaotic antics. Hobgoblins are versatile house spirits, sometimes helpful, sometimes troublesome, while the Green Man is an ancient nature spirit, often depicted as a face made of foliage, symbolizing rebirth and the wildness of the forest. The concept of the fairy ring is particularly strong in English folklore, believed to be the sites of fairy dances. Wales is rich in its own unique fairy traditions. The Tylwyth Teg, fair folk, are prominent, often associated with lakes, rivers, and mountains. They are generally benevolent but can be offended. The Gwragedd are beautiful lake maidens, sometimes marrying human men but with strict taboos, for example, never striking them 3 times, breaking which leads to their disappearance. These tales often highlight cultural anxieties around interspecies relationships and broken promises. Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, often refers to the hidden folk, emphasizing their concealed nature. Their stories include trolls, often large and dangerous, but sometimes small and helpful, depending on the region, who are deeply ingrained in the landscape. Nisses, house spirits similar to brownies, are vital for farm prosperity, requiring respect and offerings. The Huldra is a beautiful forest spirit who can be dangerous to men, luring them with her enchanting song, but reveals a hollow back if seen from behind, a sign of her otherworldly nature. Stories often revolve around encounters in forests or mountains, reflecting the deep connection between people and their rugged landscapes. Finally, Germany is home to many influential fairy tales and folk beliefs. The Rubudsoll, a mountain spirit of the giant mountains, often depicted as a giant or a gnome, testing travelers, embodies the wild, unpredictable nature of mountainous terrain. Kobolds, mine spirits, are associated with mines and underground tunnels, sometimes helpful, sometimes malicious, echoing the dangers and superstitions of mining communities. Various forest sprites and nymphs exist. The Brothers Grimm, collecting tales like Hansel and Gretel and Rapunzel, contributed significantly to the global understanding of German folklore, often featuring dark, cautionary elements alongside magical beings. In conclusion, while the literal existence of fairies remains firmly in the realm of fiction, their enduring presence in human culture is undeniably real. Fairy stories are a testament to our innate desire to connect with the mysteries of the natural world, to find meaning in the unseen, and to express the timeless struggle between good and evil, nature and civilization. They remind us that even in a scientifically explained world, there is still ample room for wonder and the whisper of magic. Should one wish to potentially find fairies, folklore offers various suggestions, though success is never guaranteed. The most common locations are ancient, undisturbed natural sites, old-growth forests, secluded glens, hidden caves, and especially locations marked by fairy rings, circles of mushrooms. Water sources like untouched springs, silent lakes, and gentle streams are also often considered portals to their realm, as are ancient megalithic sites, barrows, and burial mounds, which are believed to be their homes. These places often hold an inherent sense of mystery and untouched beauty, fostering an atmosphere conducive to belief. For those truly seeking an encounter, traditional lore suggests approaching with respect and humility. Leaving small offerings of milk, honey, bread, or shiny objects, like pebbles or coins, can be seen as an act of goodwill. Visiting at liminal times, such as dawn, dusk, or during solstices and equinoxes when the veil between worlds is said to be thinnest, might also increase one's chances. Silence, patience, and a genuine belief in the possibility of the unseen are often cited as more effective than any physical search. Ultimately, whether one finds a fairy in a literal sense or simply feels a profound connection to the magic of nature, the search itself enriches the human experience and strengthens the enduring power of these ancient tales.